Good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Triple Tap Tuesday. It is great to be here and great to see everybody on the line tonight. And it's also my pleasure to welcome Kim Robertson and Kent to the call. And Kim is stepping in for Lance, who is resting up at the moment. And we do wish Lance some good rest and recovery. So welcome to both of you to the call this evening. Thanks for co-hosting with me. How have you been? We'll start with ladies first. Kim, how has your week been?
Awesome as always, Ames. Lots of stuff happening up here in Mackay. So our Birregubba Nation is really going ahead very quickly. We've had some meetings with international embassies in the last 2 weeks, which was just amazing. And funny enough, very poignant to the topic tonight, a letter has gone to Queensland Hydro on behalf of Birregubba Nation. So exciting stuff there, and very apt that happened yesterday, and we're talking to Katy this evening.
Yeah, excellent. And you had an exciting trip down to Canberra as well, didn't you? Meeting the Venezuelan and the Russian embassy with Birregubba, and some beautiful photos and images have come out about that, and the Venezuelan embassy tweeting about you.
Yes, that was very exciting and a great start to developing international relationships. And we also had some wonderful conversations with some international lawyers. So lots of support happening there as well, but really, really good to kick that off and have that support from those nations for independence and sovereignty. So it's just wonderful.
Very, very exciting. And we are definitely steaming ahead and working on another nation that we're working on. And hopefully in the next maybe month and a bit, we might be able to announce another nation. So very, very exciting. Ken, how has your week been and what have you been up to?
Well, good evening, Ainsley. Good evening, Kim. I just want to say the week's been fantastic. Not as fantastic as you both look this evening. You both look awesome. That's fantastic of you to, give us a treat to see your smiling faces. The week, what have I been doing? I've been talking with a couple of internationally recognised geopolitical analysts who both have specializations in international demographics. I've been talking specifically with them about the projected population for China, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in Ukraine, etc. The very, very sadly, within 15 years, it's strong. The numbers are suggesting China's population will be down to 650 million people. That is astounding. Currently, they are at 1.3 billion. And it's looking like within 15 years, their population will be down to 650 million. I cannot stress what pressure that will put on the economy of all our nations. It's going to be remarkable. The things I've been learning about have been, quite engrossing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm going to just do a quick screen share at the moment before we read the bio of our guest this evening. It is a little bit of a long story, guys, and I don't mind sharing this because sometimes there's great people in our community who are doing fabulous work, and I think it's always worthy to share their stories. So I'm just going to go ahead and sit back, enjoy this. I hope you got a cuppa there, and you can share this story and get your questions ready because we are interviewing an incredible lady tonight by the name of Katy McCallum. So I'm just going to go ahead and read her bio before we bring her onto the call. So Katy McCallum wants to say thank you in advance for listening to her story and ask please that you tell this story to others and urge them to take an interest in this topic as the Queensland government are about to do irreparable damage to our beautiful country. So let's begin a summary of Katy's story before we bring her on. And she'll give us an update on where she's at and how we, the people of Australia, can help her. Katy McCallum is a mum of two and a wife to the man she's been with for 20 years. They live on the Black Snake Range, which is a beautiful but not widely recognised mountain range that sits approximately 20 kilometres west of Gympie. I've got a little map there on the screen for you. And their nearest town is Kilkeven, which sits on the Wide Bay Highway at the base of the northern end of the Black Snake Range. And for the last 6 years, Katy and her husband have owned the Kilkeven General Store and the Kilkeven Rural Store. Katy began life in Gatton, Lockyer Valley. She's a genuine born and bred Gatton girl, just like the one Lee Kernaghan sings about in Country Crowd. And after leaving Lockyer State High, she became a spare parts interpreter working for Max Carpenter at the Ford dealership in Gatton. Then she headed off to University of Queensland, Gatton and St Lucia for a few years. However, never finished her degree because she says it was boring and a massive waste of her time. She really wanted to get out and do something for society to make it a better place, not having to spend 5 years at uni and then 10 years climbing the government ladder to get into a spot where she could do some good. So Katy put an application in to join the Queensland Police Service and was accepted immediately at 23 years of age. It seems like we keep interviewing people from the Queensland Police Force lately, so it's very exciting. Off she went to the Oxley Academy, where she suddenly realised she could transfer anywhere in this awesome state and get paid to work and play. Of course, she put her hand up to be transferred straight to Mount Isa, Adventure Central. Now, the Academy inspector called her to counsel her about her decision because they'd never had a female recruit asked to go directly to Mount Isa. Katy did some wild and unbelievable police work while in Mount Isa Direct. She worked in Birdsville, Baduri, Boulia, Dajara, Camberwell, Dumadji and Mornington Island. And I do hope I did those towns and cities justice because I am not from that area. So if Katy told you some of the stories, that you most likely would not believe her. She was also thrown into the deep end by the Mount Isa training officer who nominated her in the 2003 Rotary Miss Mount Isa Rodeo Queen Quest, which she won. She ended up with a big shiny crown on her head and was subsequently required to represent Mount Isa for the next 12 months. And everywhere she worked and lived, it became apparent to her that there's a lot of unnecessary injustice and inequality, and this is usually brought upon individuals and communities by politicians and governments who make decisions to suit themselves. Doesn't that sound familiar? Katy got herself in some hot water and was almost forced transferred out of Dumadji because she told the truth about child safety issues that had never been reported properly. Thankfully, the district magistrate, who happens to be an Aboriginal man, called some people down in Parliament House in Brisbane, some 2,000 kilometres away, and endorsed her actions and words. And just like magic, an inquiry was launched, and the liquor licensing, the Queensland government and the QPS decided that they probably needed to add 16 extra police positions to the Gulf of Carpentaria to address the issues she had raised. Of course, there was never an apology from the brass or the politicians, surprise, surprise, who initially wanted her head on a block and put her through a lot of stress. Now, Katy resigned from the QPS in 2017 when she was stationed at Mergun. She never left the rank of constable and she wasn't chasing pay points or rank, and she had utter contempt at how the system worked. And I'm sure many of you would agree with that. So she stayed as a general duties constable her entire career. And it was a sad day for Katy when she finished up, as she saw her position as a police officer as her way of fixing the world, and wondered what she was going to do next to earn her place on the earth. Now, as the new owner of the Kilkeven General Store, you can see that on the screen there, she began to see small local issues that she could use her legal background to help fix, and she could use her police experience to help the locals when they were completely stuck with an issue and didn't know what to do. And then suddenly in December 2022, their entire region was thrown completely under the bus by the Queensland government, who announced they intended to run the transmission lines for the proposed Burumba pumped hydro project somewhere throughout their beautiful region. And Katy is no stranger to being in the news. You can see there, she's got a few articles there where she's actually been, standing up for the things that she passionately believes in. So Katy did what Katy does best, and she took action. She created the Kilkevin Action Group, and they are now in a massive fight to save their region, as dozens of other groups along the eastern side of Australia who are all in the same boat. And I know Kim's going to share some of her experience tonight with the hydro stuff. They are just at the beginning and have a hard slog ahead of them. Katy hopes that by telling her story in places like here on Triple Tap, word will spread and people will begin to make decisions at the ballot box that will help to steer our country in a different direction. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please let's welcome Katy McCallum to the call. So, Katy, if you're there, love, turn on your screen and let's get chatting. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, welcome to the call, and tell us a little bit more about where you're at right now with all the action group.
Well, I might just go back to December of last year just to give a little bit of a better explanation of what happened here.
Sure.
Because where I am here in the shop, and as you can see, I'm sitting in the front counter of my shop right now. This is what people see when they come in, and there's our signs behind us that we try to get people to take and put up on the highway everywhere. But not many people are aware of what is going on. And the reason why I want to get this message out there is so that people understand that this can happen to them as well, that you can wake up one day and find out that your backyard is being proposed to be taken over by a government organisation, and that there's laws in this state that allow them to do that. So December last year, everybody was living their lovely lives here in Kilkevin, as we always have done, and we wake up to find that somebody had received one single letter stating that they'd picked a 4-kilometre corridor throughout our region, and that they were going to assess that 4-kilometre corridor and 2 other 4-kilometre corridors, decide on the best route to pick, and they would be putting the transmission lines to connect the proposed pumped hydro project at Burumba over in the Mary Valley, which is some 90-odd k's from here and in a completely different geographical area to us, and run the power from that hydro facility across to Waluga, which is a small area on the Wide Bay Highway where a substation sits. So it was really big news to everybody here. We had no idea about any of this stuff. And it became apparent very quickly that we were in a bit of trouble. So I made a few phone calls, found out that Powerlink had apparently already held a community consultation here in our town. But the issue with that was that I speak to hundreds of people here in this shop every single day, and I was unable to find a single person who had attended that meeting. So I felt my spidey senses were tingling, and I felt that perhaps there might have been a little bit of a covert meeting held that we didn't really get told about properly. So cut a very long story short with that, I got another meeting and they came back to Kilkevin, and I managed to razzle 300 or more locals to turn up at our local hall to let Powerlink know that we may be a bit of a force to be reckoned with. And it was the most amazing thing to see that many local people in our tiny little hall. I was stoked. It was just brilliant.
Well, you are a small town, aren't you, Katy? Because there's not, according to the stats, there's only like less than 700 of you in the town.
Yeah.
So you rallied half the town.
Yeah. There's quite a few people in the district. It's quite a large district, but of course you face the fact that people are out chasing cows and riding tractors, and it's very hard to get people into town at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it was a brilliant turnout. I was so proud of everybody. And at that particular meeting, it became apparent to all of us that Powerlink had already decided they were choosing our district to run the power lines through, which begs the question, why in December and the month of Christmas, when families are coming together and enjoying that bit of time at the end of the year, why you would put several thousand other people through the anxiety in the other 2 corridors of worrying about whether they were going to have these lines ruin their backyards and ruin their cattle properties when they already knew that they were coming out here. Because it might have been a Freudian slip, and I blame it on that, but the manager hopped up on the stage and said out loud, "We're here to talk to you because the Western route, which is the preferred corridor," and he let those words out of his mouth. This was the preferred corridor. So I'd say there'd been some desktop studies done already, and they already knew where this was going to go. But they kept everybody on the edge of their seats until April of this year, when they made the announcement that they had chosen Kilkevin. And
Katy,
that morning,
what does it mean for this to go through your district? What does it mean?
So what it means is that there'll be nearly 90 kilometres of 500 kV power lines installed. Those power lines, they sit on almost 95 metre high towers. Those towers have a footprint that is 60 by 60 by 60 by 60 metres big. And whilst Powerlink has been telling everybody they won't go near homes, we already know that they're going to go within 100 metres of brand new homes, forever homes that people built to live in for the rest of their lives that are only 1 or 2 years old. And apart from the cost on people's mental health to find that out, we've also got massive cattle properties here where the owners of those properties, multi-generational owners, have expended huge amounts of energy and a lot of money to keep those properties beautifully clear of all declared pests. They maintain those properties unbelievably, and these lines, when they run them through those properties, will bring Parthenium, rat's tail, mother of millions. It's a fact. There's no way that Powerlink can assure anybody that they will stop the biosecurity issues. Even though they have said they will, all they need to do is bring one tiny rat's tail seed onto a farm and it's away, off it goes. The next big issue for our community is that we've got an amazing array of really unique wildlife that lives on all of the properties along this route that they've picked. When they bring the bulldozers and the machinery and the crews of workers in to put these lines in, there won't be a single echidna, koala, phascogale, quoll, feather glider, wedge-tail eagle, peregrine falcon left. Because could you imagine what they'll require to install 95-metre towers with 60-metre square footprints? It would be massive, a massive undertaking. And the noise and the vibration. And it beggars belief to think that the people on these properties aren't allowed to disturb the soil or knock trees down, not that they want to, but that the government can acquire an easement over these properties and it gives them free rein to come in and wipe them out with a bulldozer.
Katy,
sorry, Kate, go for it.
Katy, a lot of people who are listening to this might think, well, we've got to have power. We have to live. Okay.
Yes.
And that's a given. That's true. And I know that you, having had a little bit of discussion with you about this and looked into what your action group is about, and certainly the people in Kilkevin, they live with electricity and use it themselves. They're well aware that someone's got to generate the power. Okay. So a couple of questions. Currently, do you have enough electricity in your area to run your homes?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll say outright that the majority of homes here have solar panels that provide their own power during the day, but my understanding is that the power that will be fed into that substation will be, the majority of that is going to the populated areas of southeast Queensland.
Correct. And that's the point I wanted to make, because I was watching a TV report on primetime 7, 9, it was on the ABC as well. The past chief engineer of power generation in Queensland, he's retired now, has come out very strongly as an advocate against both pumped hydro storage schemes in Queensland, and said to them, you silly government fools, you are building all of this power generation so far away from where it's going to be used. You're increasing the cost. You're unnecessarily destroying hundreds of kilometres of extra wildlife.
Yep.
So the cost to build it is up. The losses in transmission are massive because the energy is being used a couple of 100 kilometres away. And in the case of from Cairns, Kim, how far is Cairns from Brizzy, mate? How far?
Oh, 2 days drive.
Yeah, right.
Nearly
So
2,000 kilometres.
that's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah, 1,800. Yeah.
We're looking at all of that power generation, all of those losses. And that alone, this past chief engineer has said that's enough for anyone in their right mind would not be doing this. And he is cutting edge expert. Have you been able to have any discussions with people like that?
No, we're the same as you. We see what they say on TV or what information we get released to us through social media. We're very reliant on people like Senator Jared Rennick and Senator Malcolm Roberts. They've been brilliant in providing information that's blown the lid open on this whole entire industry. And but what you say is correct. That there was an option. So let's say somebody comes ahead and says that this pumped hydro project is viable. That's an unbelievably viable project that's going to do wonders for the state, which we know is not correct.
Yeah.
You know, all it is a $14 billion plus black hole in our economy, because that's how much money they will spend on it, and it will probably fail in the end. But let's just say they do go ahead with it, and they put these transmission lines in. They're running them 90 kilometres around when they could run them directly 40 kilometres straight to the substation. So they're more than doubling the length, which makes us wonder why. And whilst we know you can't tap into these giant lines, we wonder if once they have this easement, it gives the government an in and will allow them to expand solar, wind, other sorts of energy generation facilities further out in our district and out towards the Burnett, the South Burnett, the North Burnett, which is a very scary thought, I might add, to think that they're going to destroy all the rural land out here. We've already been hit with this giant solar farm at Waluga, which in January of this year was devastated by a hailstorm, and they had to replace nearly 2/3 of the panels. And guess where the old panels ended up?
Go on, tell us.
Landfill.
Yeah, and the thing is, what people don't understand is these solar panels, they leak dangerous metals onto the ground, which of course is eaten by livestock, which is then picked up and put out for consumption for us. So we're filling our brains up with all these toxins, heavy metals. The story goes on.
Not to mention the BPA. I mean, I think the estimate is that 0.2 grams of bisphenol A is eroded off the blades of each wind turbine every day. Now, I grew up in the Lockyer Valley. There's barely a person I grew up with who hasn't been affected by cancer and lost people in their family, because back in the 70s when I was a kid, aerial spraying was the norm. And that wafted over the town and onto people's roofs and into the water tanks. This BPA is going to do exactly the same thing. Yep. It's going to end up in the clouds, on the ground. Beef are going to eat the grass and lick the ground where the BPA is. It's going to end up in their muscle tissue, which ultimately ends up in our stomachs. And we will be the people who suffer the consequences at the end of that process. And they're not even talking about that at the moment.
I think they wouldn't even touch on it right now.
Katy, how far into the fight are you?
So what happened was when we had that first meeting with PowerLink, and again, I go back to my spidey sense, because I pay a lot of, I think your spidey sense, you can trust it if you've got it. My spidey sense was tingling after that first meeting. And I thought, right, they're coming in here talking all nicely about how they're just going to come onto everybody's properties. And I had met Drew Hutton, who's from the Lock the Gate program, you know, the little yellow triangles you see in the trees everywhere. I'd met him years before when he was involved in some protesting out there at Tara. And it made me think, well, what rights do we have to lock our gates? And coming from a police background, and Ken, I think that you and Kim will both appreciate this, immediately I thought, what are my powers? What are my powers of entry? It's the first thing you think as a police officer before you go anywhere. What are my powers to go in here? Because if I do the wrong thing, I'm possibly going to lose my job or get demoted or lose a pay point, whatever. So I went and I read through the PPRA, which up until 2017 was my bread and butter every day.
So the PPRA, just for those who are watching, that's the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act.
Yes. Yep, that's correct. Thanks, Kent. Sorry, I should have explained
Right,
that.
mate.
Yeah.
That's all right.
That's what allows police all around Queensland to do what they do each day. They're not allowed to do any more than what's listed in that legislation. So I couldn't find any powers of entry for the police or for any government-owned corporations or for any subcontractors of any electrical construction authorities to come into properties under the PPRA. So then I looked at the Acquisition of Land Act, and then I looked at the Electricity Act. And what I found was that there are sections that state that they can serve a notice to enter, to come and do cursory works. For example, they might need to count the koalas or do some LiDAR testing to see what the bedrock's like. They must serve you a notice first, and that notice has to give 7 days grace before they come on in, and that notice has to be served on you personally or via registered post. And Kent, as you know, registered post, once you sign for it, that's effective service. So in a court of law here in Queensland, if you've signed for registered mail, it means you've accepted the paperwork. So I called another meeting and got everybody here, and I said to them, look, I'm not a solicitor, and all I am is a ex-baggy-ass cop with a bit of street knowledge, but this is what I know. Nobody can come onto your land. It is a trespassing offence, and you don't even need a trespassing sign up to have somebody charged with trespassing here in Queensland. So I suggest that we all say we're not accepting any paperwork from Powerlink, don't accept any registered mail. We lock our gates and we put signs up everywhere saying, Powerlink, you are not welcome. And that's how we started. That's how Kilkeven Action Group started. And we've just been rolling from there. Through the entire process, Powerlink has tried to keep the lines of communication open. I'll give them credit for that. But what I believe that's for is only to gain our trust and gain some ground with the locals here. Because if they had their way, they would get onto people's property through consent by talking them into letting them on. So I think that what this has done is it's woken everybody up in this immediate region to the fact that we need to know our rights and our laws, especially in relation to property that we own, but also in everyday life. And so I've really been hammering it home for the last few months to everybody. These are the rights of a police officer. These are the rights of an environmental officer. These are the rights of a local council officer. Because what I'm finding is that these people from different departments, they're just turning up at people's houses and walking on in. And they're not following the rules. And see, in all of my time in the police, I followed the rules. And I believe that everybody should follow the rules.
Well, of course, you know that they should follow the rules, and the separation of powers should ensure that they follow the rules. But recently, High Court judges have admitted that there's no such thing as separation of powers in Australia anymore. And Kim can definitely share stories of how the Queensland Police Service is quite happy to say, we understand that we are about to heavily violate and destroy all of your human rights, and we just don't care. They're quite happy to do that.
And if they're happy to do that, then they're happy to do anything. Katy, as you know, I'm up in Mackay, and we have the Pioneer Burdekin pumped hydro scheme going on up here in the Netherdale region. They want to build the big dam. So there's a couple of points in there that you raised before that I'd like to just touch on, and maybe we can have a chat about them. So with the pumped hydro scheme here that they are building, they're also building the very wind farm that you were talking about at the top of the range, because it doesn't generate enough electricity to actually pump the water back up.
Yes, that's correct.
And in the meantime,
it's a joke, isn't it?
It's an absolute joke. In the meantime, they are using coal-generated power.
Yes,
to pump
it's the same down here.
Power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is no logical sense whatsoever as to why this would even go ahead. Now, we know that they are putting out all of this propaganda again, as they always do, and
Mhm.
trying to get the people on side. We are having the same problems here where they are just walking into properties. They are harassing our people up here. People are getting phone calls. They are being pushed to sell their properties.
Yes.
They are saying, if you sell your property to us now, we will give you a third more of what the market rate is. Mind you, the market rate has now dropped for properties because of this pumped hydro scheme.
Yes.
So they are really pushing. The mental health of our people up here has absolutely deteriorating due to this whole process.
Yes.
And you talked about the environmental study before, and what's really interesting is our guys up here have found that our endangered species do not even exist on the list that the government has chosen to use. They exist everywhere else, but not on the one that they have chosen to use for that.
Mhm.
Have you found the same thing?
Look, I haven't read. There is a list that they've created for us. I believe that there's a few animals around here that aren't on it. I can't speak to them specifically at the moment. There's so much information relating to this whole issue. I do know that I've said to them over and over again, and I don't think they believe me, that there is an entire family of wedge-tailed eagles living right where they want to put these lines through. And what astounds me is the fact that the Queensland government has an information brochure available on their website right now that states that the wedge-tailed eagle is a protected species and that its threats to being killed each year are power lines.
Yeah, of course.
It's in black and white on their own information brochure, but they're happy to put through 100. I mean, let's face it, these are going to be nearly 100 metres high. So a 100-metre sprinting strip up in the air. Do you think those wedge-tailed eagles are going to know the difference between, when a draft of wind catches them and they fly into one of these giant cables? There'll be no wedge-tailed eagles left here. It's amazing. It just seems like they do whatever they need to do to suit their purposes, I guess. So yes, Kim, I do think that that's what's going on.
Yeah. Why do you think they are pushing so hard ahead with all of this? Because there is a lot of studies out now which say that hydropower actually causes or creates a substantial amount of carbon emissions. In fact, the guy who was the consultant to the United Nations has published a paper saying he was a consultant on hydropower, has actually published a paper which states that the amount of carbons which is produced and methane produced by these hydrogen power plants is really high.
They're environment killers.
They are.
Pumped storage hydropower, pumped hydro power is an environmental disaster waiting to happen.
Yes. Well, can I just go back to what you said there, Kim, when you asked why do we think they're pushing ahead with it? Yeah. And you would have already heard this. The Minister, Nick DeBrenny, continues to answer every single question that's difficult or requiring some truth to be spoken. He doesn't appear to be able to speak any truth. And I can vouch for that personally after I met with David Littleproud and was on the TV recently, and Mr. DeBrenny gave an answer in response to something that I'd said, which didn't answer what I'd said. But he just continues to push the fact that this is for the jobs program for Queensland. and I'm so I mean, it's pretty easy to put 2 + 2 together here and come up with 4. They want some sort of a legacy before they get voted out next year to say that they created X amount of jobs here in the economy. And that is why I believe they're pushing so hard for this right now, because it's already created some jobs. But guess who those jobs are for? Those jobs are for giant companies based in the Gold Coast and Brisbane and Sydney, and they're winning the contracts to do this drilling and this testing.
And Katy, you don't think those giant companies, they wouldn't be making any donations to the Labor Party of Queensland, would they?
Very interesting to look into that, wouldn't it, Kent?
That's not corrupt. The World Economic Forum calls that just cooperation. This is just cooperation.
Yes, of course, that's it. Well, the thing that everybody needs to understand, and I'll just if I can just give a quick story, just recently, somebody who lives in our region walked through that front door of my shop right there that I'm looking at. And I swear, if I was a man, I would have been outside having a punch up with him because he was so angry with me and he was looking for a fight. He said to me, we're all talking about you a lot at the moment. Don't you want all these jobs to come to our region that this $14 billion project will generate? And I said to him, do you seriously believe that our region right here is going to have jobs out of this? They put a 3,500 acre solar farm in 5 minutes down the road, and not a single person in this town got a job there.
And you know who got, I looked into this, you know who gets jobs installing those solar panels? The least trained people they can get their hands on, and a lot of them are backpackers. They'll take anyone. They just it's
they were struggling to find staff to work down at that one, I believe, to get it finished. But from what I can see here, we did not gain anything and from the solar farm. And you know, Powerlink has made comments about the fact that, oh, look, you know, we might be able to fix some roads and we might be able to help with some stuff around the town. Isn't that the responsibility of our local council? The fact that our park is absolutely outdated, dangerous, you know, children won't play in it, it's so disgusting. I believe that's a problem for our local council to fix, not for Powerlink to come and drop $5,000 in the laps of our council and say, here, throw that at the local skate bowl to shut these people up. Because I think that that's what they do. I mean, you look at the giant wind turbine complex down behind in the Maranoa area where David Littleproud represents, a giant multi-million dollar project, and it dropped $19,000 donation on the local football club. $19,000.
Of course.
To try and shut them up.
I got a question for you, Katie, from one of our listeners.
Yes.
Does your region even need the jobs?
No. No, it actually doesn't. That's a very good question. And I do get sick of people saying you must just be a bunch of NIMBYs. You don't want this in your backyards. Wouldn't you want some more jobs out there? Don't you want some, progression of your region? No, actually, we love the place just the way it is. And it costs us all a fortune to live here, so much more than what it costs to live in the city. You've got to spend more on fuel to get to the local hospital, to get to appointments. Your rates are massive. The cost of living out here is so much higher. Would somebody in the city want a giant 100-metre tower sitting in their backyard, 50 metres from their kitchen window? No, I don't think so. When did we become second-class citizens? When did our rights as human beings become second-class to the rights of anybody else? The majority of the properties out here are off-grid. They either don't have any power and they use wood-fired ovens and wood-fired donkey boilers for their hot water, or they use solar panels. And the places that are connected, like my shop here, I spent the $120,000 6 years ago and put it on solar. So I don't need any power during the day. And at night time, if necessary, I would put some batteries in. Not that I agree with batteries, I must say, but why should we lose our visual amenity, our environment, our built environment? Why? Why should we lose it? For what? Because nobody's going to get any jobs. We don't need the jobs.
Kim, I'm going to... Sorry, Kim, I just want
to
go across to Kim. Kim, you've actually been through sort of some of this with what you're doing your area with the pump station. Have you got any good advice or some words of wisdom that you always got words of wisdom, but have you got some words of wisdom that you would like to, leave with Katy to help her on her journey of fighting against these hydro pump people?
I think we've had protests up here, and like you, we have community meetings all of the time of which the Netherdale community goes to. The Mackay community has gotten behind that, and quite often we have people going up to them from Mackay, asking the hard questions. But as we know, that's not going to do anything. One of the biggest things that we tell people up here is just say no.
Yes.
Say no. That is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other things that can happen is when they start to turn some soil, not so much in the drilling stage, but if they actually start going in, then you can actually go to the court and have a what's it called? It's like an intervention. Just the name escapes me. Taken out on those people, so it stops everything until it goes to court and the hearing goes ahead.
Injunction.
You're talking about an injunction.
An injunction, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So that's one of the things that they can do. But the most important thing is to get everybody to stand together and to just say no, because they don't have the lawful powers to actually do this.
Yes. Well, if I could just expand on that a little bit, Kim, what we ended up doing was we joined forces with Property Rights Australia, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that particular group. They're all about property rights for rural landholders, and I'll be honest, I had no idea they existed until early this year, and it's the best thing ever that I found them, because they've got this thing called the Fighting Fund, and we held a few rallies and people donated hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and as a result, that information that we all shared before about the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act, the ALA and the Electricity Act, they got Marlon Law, and you may have heard of Marlon Law because that's the guy, Tom Marlon, who's fighting Paradise Dam issues. And they developed this amazing little pocket guide that's called Who Has Power. So we're handing this out to everybody, and it explains those things that you just said there. We need to stand united. We need to keep our gates closed. Know that we're not going to agree to what they're trying to do, and that when these giant carloads of high-vis wearing men turn up at your gate in 2 or 3 Hiluxes after one another, that they don't come through the gate and that they can't be bullies and just walk on in. So we're trying to spread that word to everybody, exactly as you said. Say no, don't let them on your property. Call the police, which is what they're doing in Victoria now. I'm not sure if you've heard that. They're actually calling the police with the whole AusNet program, and the police are coming out and removing the AusNet workers off people's properties because they don't have a right. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But the whole PRA thing going on from now, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but have you heard about the giant banner that the group PETA, which is an animal welfare group, have put outside of Rockhampton recently?
No.
There is a dead koala, and it's in a Cryovac container, like a meat container, with a price tag across the front as if it's been priced up like beef. And then it says in giant letters, and let's not forget this is the beef capital of Australia where they've put this sign. It says, if you eat beef, you kill koalas. And so this whole issue feeds back into what we see as the big issue in this country, and that is that the populations of the cities are growing exponentially. The populations out here in rural areas are just staying steady, and the people in the cities don't actually understand what we're going through out here, that they're forcing solar panels on us, they're forcing wind turbines on us, they're forcing giant power lines through our properties, and putting rubbish billboards up like that on the highway. So what we're actually having a meeting this week with quite a few people from PRA and some other groups, and we want to design a billboard, and we want to raise the funds, and we want to stick that billboard the entire way from the top of Australia down to the bottom of Australia, all along the east coast. And it could be something like a wind turbine with a mangled wedge-tailed eagle next to it that says, if you use renewable energy, you kill wedge-tailed eagles. Something like that. Yeah. Because we need to start fighting back. Yeah. And the only way to fight back is to put it in people's faces.
Got another question from one of our listeners, Katy. What are the health risks of being exposed to these power lines?
Oh.
Right. So I can't give you exact information on that because we've been provided with so many links to go and research it ourselves every time we've asked.
Yep.
Kent, you might have some more info on that in particularly, but what I do know is that you don't want to stand underneath one for too long because your hair stands on end and you can light a globe up that you're holding in your hands.
Well, funnily enough, I do have a list of things that I do want to share with you. The epidemiological studies that have gone into the effects of, like, we're talking massive power lines here, 500 kilovolt amps, right? So this is massive generation. The links to cancer, the links to serious disease are phenomenal, and they're well proven, and they're also well attacked and well hidden by people who have a lot of money.
Yes.
But let's pull this back to linking everyone together. Let's give you a few ideas that will link the people in the cities together with the people in the country, so that we can get you working together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a fair bit of research into pumped hydro storage facilities and this type of power. And it makes me wonder what our state government is thinking. First of all, the time frame to build these facilities is massive, right? They're massive. It take a very, very long time, which of course leads to huge budget blowouts. And I know you're talking about 14 billion for your area, but when we add the second pumped storage hydroelectric scheme that's going on up in Kim's area, up in Mackay, and you put those two together, the government's limited estimate is 65 billion.
Oh.
Industry experts are suggesting that's going to blow out more to around 150 billion. Okay, not a problem. What that does is produce the most expensive power for everyone in Queensland. Mm-hmm. So we're going to trade in cost-effective, more environmentally friendly coal power stations, and this new technology, which is absolutely rubbish. So we got budget blowouts. My question is, who's paying for it? Because the Queensland government has said Queenslanders are only going to have to pay for half of it, which is a massive lie. We end up paying for all of it because we're the ones who pay for the use of it, right? But I want to know who the other investors are. If Queensland Tax is only paying for half of these new facilities, who's paying for the rest of it, and who are we giving our souls to? So we got to have that answered, right? So the cost per kilowatt is way more expensive. We've got huge amounts of population displacement for this type of power generation because of the water reservoirs. But I want you to think about this too. Those water reservoirs, once they're built, they don't grow any bigger. You can't just add a little bit onto them. They're a fixed size. So very quickly they'll run out of capacity as population grows. Unless, of course, they might be planning on diminishing the population somehow. I wonder how they might do that, Ainsley. But anyway, okay. So the next thing is that everyone's saying that this massive power scheme that the Palaszczuk government's putting in is bigger than the Snowy, right? But it's only got 24 hours of reservoir in it. The Snowy has got 7 days of power in it.
Yeah.
Have you run into any of those problems? I see you nodding your head.
Well, that's the thing that we can't understand. Where is the benefit in spending $14.2 billion? That's the start mark on a facility that only has 24 hours of stored power ability in it.
24 hours?
I own a business. I'm not an expert at business, but it's pretty straightforward to me. Costs, versus income. I'm not sure how they can suggest that that's a worthwhile spend, especially when we've got people living in cars. We've got hospitals that can't treat people. We've got roads that you can't drive on, but they're going to spend our money on a giant battery that won't be able to do its job.
Here's what I want to share with you. The absolute experts who have decades of experience in this type of power generation and in running and building networks for the state of Queensland, who've been stood down from their positions, by the way, wonder why that happened, right? They are saying this is a bad idea for Queensland, all Queenslanders. It's a bad idea for people in the city. It's a bad idea for people in the country, right? So these are the industry standardized experts who absolutely know what they're talking about. They're saying, no, this is bad. But Mr. Mick de Brenny, the Queensland Minister for Energy that you mentioned before, he says, I've looked into this plan and I have full confidence in this plan. Now, is Mr. Mick de Brenny, does he have any skills in creating power grids? No. In fact, his skill is a Bachelor of Commerce.
Guys, we've got about 10 minutes left. So Kim, would you like to add any further advice to Katy in this, to help in this project, or got any other further questions you'd like to ask Katy?
Yeah, I think in addition to all of that here, where they actually want to build the dam, if we have a major weather event, the whole of Mackay is going to be down. So add that into the mix. I just wanted to add that on there because it's a very real problem that we're facing, and no doubt the town or the location of where your hydro dam is going to face the same problems. But they don't take any of that into account.
No, we asked that question. Do they have floodgate or flood mitigation processes in place when they lift the wall 35 metres or 70 metres? I can't remember the figure. And no, there's nothing in place. And that concerns me. I was in Grantham in 2011, the very first day after that tidal wave of water went through there. And I'll tell you what, if this dam fails catastrophically, or we have a massive weather event like the one we had in January last year in Kilkeven, when we nearly got drowned unexpectedly, I feel sorry for every single soul in that Mary Valley, because if that wall breaks, there will not be anyone left. Anyone.
No.
And it was the same for you guys up there at Youngley. It'll be exactly the same.
Yeah.
You have to see with your own eyes to believe what water can do in a capacity like that.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you think that perhaps this might be a bit of a land grab that the government's going for with all of these things?
Look, you have to wonder, don't you? I actually think it might be more of a water grab. I mean, let's face it, water is pure gold and it's worth a fortune. We sort of asked the question why with the Barumba project, the reservoir, the holding reservoir is being built right over the back of the range, almost in Jimna, because from the top of Jimna, you can look down and see Brisbane. So they can pump the water very quickly by putting the turbines in reverse up to the reservoir. And then all they need to do is whack some other lines in from there down to Brisbane, and Brisbane suddenly has a new water source. And that is that they've sucked all the water out of the Mary Valley. But they couldn't possibly be doing that, Kim, because they're very worried about the health of the Sandy Strait and Fraser Island, because they're telling farmers they're not allowed to turn a sort of dirt in case some soil washes into a creek as far out here as Kilkeven. So I'm sure that's not what they're doing.
No, I didn't think so either. Yeah. I think it'd be great if we could get our guys up here in touch with you and join forces. Start sharing some ideas and get onto the same sort of processes, maybe try different things in different areas as well. I think if you'd be happy to do that,
absolutely.
I'd love to get in touch with them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think we're trying to get a bit of a gang of people to head down to Parliament House on August the 22nd, which I'm sure you already know about. We've also got Barnaby Joyce. Have you guys been notified about his campaign where he's trying to bring everybody together to get another?
I'm not aware of that, but
we could share that information with you as well. I mean, you'd be aware that they went to their fourth application to the Senate to try to get an inquiry into the rollout of these projects. And it was, it was voted down by the Labor Party and the Greens and the Independents. The people who allegedly are greenies and look after the planet voted against having a common sense inquiry into these renewable energy zones and these projects.
Look,
I don't even know what to say.
Look, the electrical generation grid of Queensland is old. It's worn out. Over the last 30 years with solar panels, they've stuffed it up so badly. And I'm getting my information from engineers inside of Energex who don't want to be named. Okay?
Yeah.
They say the mismanagement of funds by the Queensland government in power generation is so pathetic that these engineers who work at Energex are just looking at their bosses, just shaking their heads.
Yeah.
And every time they try and raise a common sense solution, the powers that be just basically threaten them with their jobs, and they don't get promotions, etc. So they're just shutting up, going along with it. We've got a state with an aging power grid that the government has not planned to replace. They've been very irresponsible with creating these new systems. And we all know the World Economic Forum's plan is has to be pushed ahead, right? So they're all going to push ahead with that. Hence all this wind turbines and crap that just doesn't work. We know it won't work.
Yeah. Imagine if they spent $14.2 billion on, so say coal does have to go and we can't stop it for whatever reasons. Not that I agree with that opinion, but that's what happens. Why don't we stick some solar panels on people's roofs? I mean, they did it with pink bats, didn't they? And they built sheds for schools and that created jobs. And then we stick some strategic nuclear power plants up and down the coast, the east coast of Australia. I'm pretty sure we'd fix our problem with the carbon that they are saying is so deadly and toxic overnight.
It'd be cheaper. It'd be more reliable. It actually would meet peak load requirements.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It would be better for pensioners. It would be better for struggling families. It'd be better for industry. But unfortunately, you won't meet the World Economic Forum's Sustainable Development Plan, and you won't get donations to the Labor Party from all those massive contractors.
It's quite sickening, isn't it?
It's hey, look, it's a story that's been going on in Australia. Yeah, go ahead, Katy.
To think that our lives are being trodden on, to think that normal, everyday people here in Queensland and the rest of Australia go to work every day. We work our asses off to make ends meet, to provide for our children, to put food on the table, to pay ridiculous tax debts. And this is where the money goes. And yet we have no decent medical services. Our roads are shocking. We've got the highest road fatality rate in Australia out here in the Wide Bay. You know why? Because there's giant, massive potholes on a major national highway. You can't get them fixed. You ring the police out here for help. There's no police. No one's coming. So they're spending our money on this really amazing project that's going to make lots of jobs for someone. It's not going to help anybody out here.
As we come to the close of this interview, guys, Katy, what would you like people to help you with? What can we do to help in your area in this?
Number one, we need everybody to spread the word about these issues because it's not just Kilkevin. This is an issue around the entire country at the moment, and every single tiny group that's popping up everywhere needs support. And that can just be through word of mouth. It can be through people writing letters to their local members, write a letter to every single Australian senator. What we ultimately would love to do is get enough money together to put billboards the entire way up and down the east coast of Australia and bring attention to this issue, because I do believe there's a lot of people living over in the highly populated areas who probably don't even know about this yet and have no idea about the cliff that we're being led over. And the only way we can get that message to them is in big, giant billboards on the highway that they see when they're driving to work in the morning. So that's our two main goals: spread the message and follow that up with a billboard campaign where we draw attention to these issues.
Now, Katy, are you on any social media sites that people can follow you and what you're doing with all this sort of stuff? Have you got any?
So Kilkevin Action Group has a Facebook page, and we also accept emails from people. So KAG4600@gmail.com is an address that people can get in contact with us on. And we would love to hear from people if they've got ideas. I mean, we're fortunate to have Property Rights Australia on our side now, and I can't say enough good stuff about Senator Malcolm Roberts, our Wide Bay member Lou O'Brien, David Littleproud, Jared Rennick's jumping in and standing up for us as well. These people are giving us a voice in Canberra, and whether we love or hate the political system or the government in this country, we've got to get the message out. So to have these politicians standing up for us has been brilliant. But we just need the word to get out. We need everyone to talk about this issue.
Excellent. Thanks, Katy. Well, listeners, if you've enjoyed our interview with Katy McCallum here tonight, we have put the propertyrightsaustralia.org.au was the link that she was talking about before. That's in the chat there. But propertyrightsaustralia.org.au. So please do go check that out. Thank you, Kent. Thank you, Kim, for co-hosting with me this evening. It's It's been, as always, a pleasure, and for your great questions. And Katy, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening to share with us about what is going on. It's a very important subject. I know both Kim and yourself are both in doing stuff in that area, so it's really great that, Kim, you could jump in tonight to share that with Katy. Is there any last words that you'd just like to say very quickly before we wrap up?
I'd just like to thank you so much I'm sorry, Kim. I just want to say thank you on behalf of Kilpeven Action Group and all of the members of our community. This means a lot to us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Kim or Ken, any last final words?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm jumping in on you, Kim. Katy, coming through Kilcaven in about 4 weeks on my motorbike, so I'm going to drop into the general store and say g'day.
Have a coffee. They're awesome coffee here.
Sounds awesome.
Excellent.
And Katy, I just wanted to say, keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. Let's join forces.
Yes.
More hands make lighter work, and more heads make better ideas. So let's do that. I'll get your number of AIMs and we'll go from there. And let's see what we can do with it.
Yes.
Excellent.
Great.
Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for listening to episode number 54 of Triple Tap on Triple Tap Tuesday. Thank you, Katy McCallum. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll see you all next time on Triple Tap. Bye for now.